Skyline College presents the Southgate Theatre Company performing The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde. Our story opens in the fashionable London townhouse of Algernon Moncrief, an independently wealthy aristocratic dilettante. We discover the debonair man about town casually at home in his sitting room, awaiting the imminent arrival of his dear friend, Ernest Worthing.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere?
Well, where have you been since last Friday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
Well, when one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbors.
Got nice neighbors in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. I never speak to one of them.
No, how immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello, why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
No, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, that's all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business. My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin. And before I allow you to marry her, you will have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, algae pie, Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Lane, bring me that cigarette case that Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room the last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say that you have had my cigarette case all this time? Well, I wish to goodness you'd let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be more than usually hard up.
There is no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that's rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. Oh, however, it makes no matter, for now that I look at the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours after all. This cigarette case is a present from someone of the name of Cecily, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Oh, well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt. Well, that's absurd. Now, for heaven's sakes, give me back my cigarette case.
Yes, but why does your aunt call you her uncle? From little Cecily with her fondest love to her dear Uncle Jack. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
Oh. It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
You've always told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life. It's perfectly absurd. You're saying your name isn't Ernest.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country. And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small Aunt Cecily calls you her dear uncle. Come, old boy. You'd much better have the whole thing out at once. I may mention that I've always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I'm quite sure of it now.
bunburyist? Oh, what on earth do you mean by a bunburyist?
Well, I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Earnest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now, produce your explanation and pray, make it improbable.
Well, my dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism. Now, when one is in the place of being guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so, and as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness. In order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. Now that, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
What you really are is a bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you were a bunburyist. You're one of the most advanced bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Earnest in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury in order that I may be able to go down into the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable.
I am not a bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It's rather a bore.
Oh, that must be Aunt Augusta.
The doorbell did, in fact, announce the arrival of Algernon's dear aunt, Lady Bracknell, accompanied by her singularly attractive daughter, Gwendolen Fairfax. In order to give his friend Jack some time alone with Gwendolen, Algernon adroitly maneuvers Lady Bracknell out of the room. Jack, of course, seizes upon the opportunity to propose to Gwendolen. Ever since I've met you, Miss Fairfax, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes. Well, my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen.
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Earnest.
But you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Earnest.
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is. But supposing it was something else, do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Ah, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation, and like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name of Earnest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It's a divine name. It has music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once. We must get married at once. There's no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Miss Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from that semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come upon a young girl as a surprise. Pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I am making these inquiries, you, Gwendolen, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolen.
Oh, yes, Mamma.
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men, although I have the same list as the dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I am quite ready to enter your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes. I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
Well, I'm pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investment?
In investments, chiefly. I have a country house with some land, of course, attached to it.
A country house? How many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like Gwendolen could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like at 6 months' notice.
Lady Bloxham? I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She's a lady considerably advanced in years.
Nowadays that is no guarantee of respectability of character. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. And now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of some wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise from the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents. But it would be near the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't exactly know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
Where did the charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket for the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was in a handbag, a somewhat large black leather handbag with handles to it, an ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes. The Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I confess I feel somewhat bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles to it or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life, and you can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.